All right, hey everybody. So today we're going to be making a MegaMillionz app using the data that we have here from NY Open Data. So this is the URL. I'm going to add this in the description so you can take a look too. But basically, we're going to be able to get all the played numbers, including the megapliers and so. So this is what the data looks like. So we have a date here as to when it was played. We have a string here with all the numbers, the actual winning numbers that occurred for that day. And then we have the mega ball for that there, as well as what the multiplier is. So if we want to build an app using this, what we're going to do now is jump to Xcode and build this using SwiftUI. So this is Xcode. I'm going to start by creating a new project. And then I'm going to hit, I'm going to make it an iOS app. So I'm going to click next. And then for this, let's just call this Mega. I'll just call it that. You can call it whatever you want, really. And I'll hit next. Then create. Alright, let me just switch to my actual simulator so that you can see as I'm doing this, and then I'm going to maximize this on the screen. Alright, so now when we load Xcode, let's just wait till our preview loads so that you can see like rough idea of what this code right here is showing. Sometimes the preview takes forever, but pretty much loaded now. So you can see that we have image at the top, similar to what we have here, and then we have a text detail here. So if you watch the previous streams, you know I love using tab views. I feel like it's just so efficient and easy. So I'm going to start off with that. I'm going to get rid of the padding here. We're going to get rid of all this stuff that we have here. I'm going to switch to using a tab view. All right. And now we're going to create the first screen. So that's all we're going to leave right here. But now we're going to create the first screen by creating a folder first. Let's just call this new folder. And let's just call this MegaMillionz view. And then inside here, we'll just create a new SwiftUI view. I'm going to call this MegaMillionz view. And call it whatever you like, as long as it works well for you. And then I'm going to copy this name, because this is pretty much just a text, you see. Hello world. What I'm going to do now is jump over to our content view. And I'm going to say MegaMillionz view. Right? And now we see the text that we had in our MegaMillionz view in our tab view. Let me zoom in some more so you can see better. All right, now what we want to do is actually give this like a tab item so that we can see like which screen we're on. So to do this, we'll say that tab item. Let's say a V stack. And then for the image, let's go with a system image so we can get some from Apple. And then we're going to grab that image in a sec. But for now, let's just put some text here. And let's just call that MegaMillionz. Cool. All right. Now let's grab an image that we can show above this. So to do that, let's just jump here real quick. And we're going to go to SF symbols. I'll click on this. And you can download SF symbols just by Googling it. And it's made by Apple. So you get access to all these pretty much images. What we want to get is like somewhat similar to like a number. Let's see if we can find something like a number or a ball. Maybe. Oh, this might work. Go with this. Copy name. And then we're going to jump back to Xcode. And then we're just going to paste this inside that string right there. So now we get this ball here. Kind of similar to a ball, represent each ball that we're going to show. Now, the next thing we want to do is actually see if we can start creating the service to actually get the data from the API. So now let's create a new folder for this. I'm going to call this API services. Right? And then I'm going to create a new file in here. And it's going to be a regular Swift file, not a SwiftUI file. And I'm just going to say API service. Let's just get rid of the space. API services like that. Then, okay. Now the first thing we're going to do is create a protocol that kind of gives a blueprint of what our service function is going to do. So I give an example of what our service function is going to do. So protocol. And then I'm just going to call it API services again. And then for this, I'm going to create our first function, and it's going to be called fetch winning numbers. All right. That's what we want to fetch. And because we're using Swift Concurrency for this, we're going to be doing this async. So to do that, we have to also mark async here. And you want to handle our errors by throwing an error. So we say throws, right? So we almost are done with this. The only thing is that we need to tell also what do we want to return? What do we want to get back? So you want to get back an array with all of the oops, wrong. Let's go back to Safari. And now you'll see that basically we want to get back all this data here. But instead, let's look at what it looks like as an API. So to see that, let's just click on Actions. And then we'll click on API. Then we copy that link right here. And let's close that. Then we'll just open up here. Let's just paste this in our browser. So we have a better idea of what the API response is going to look like. And it looks pretty similar to our last stream where we did go over lottery app. So we probably could reuse a similar type of logic, except we have an extra parameter here. I don't think we had megaball in the previous one. So now that we have an idea of what the API looks like, let's just copy this as a reference. And then we're going to jump back to Xcode. And now remember, what we want to do here is inside our services function is that, zoom in somewhere, is that we basically want to return an array of all that data in a way that the app can understand it. So to do that, we have to create models, like models to represent each of that data. So we need a model. We need a model with a draw date, a winning numbers, a megaball, and a mega multiplier. So to do that, let's go over to our project side again, and we're going to create a new folder. And this is going to be models. And then inside models, we're going to create a new SwiftUI, Swift file, sorry. And this is also going to be called models. All right. And now inside here, let's just create this and say winning numbers. Yeah. All right. And I'm going to paste what we copied previously just to use this as a reference. And I'm going to comment it out for now. So now that we have this, let's just add the parameters that we need. So we need a draw date, which is a string. And we need a winning numbers. And then we need megaball. And then we need a multiplier. And this is also a string. One thing that's easy, I honestly rather just copying each of the names just so I don't mess it up. And I feel like I messed up multiplier, but I guess not. Others are good. So we can get rid of this reference now. And the first thing, if we continue using it like this, we'll get an error because when we try to decode it, would get an error. And that's because this struct, whenever any model that we want to transform from an API response to a model that we can use, we have to make sure that model conforms to decodable. And there's one more protocol that we're going to have to add, but I'll wait a second before doing that, and then we'll jump back to our model. So let's jump back to our services file now. And now we can update our function to actually tell it what we should get returned. So let's add that return here. And then inside here, we'll use our model we just created. And now we'll actually create a class that actually conforms to this API services. So it's the API services impl, have it conform to it. And now it's going to request that us add this. Okay. And now you see it's complaining about that. So let's just add that in and remove that code block. And now we can scroll down. So now as we're using this, we're going to keep getting this error saying missing return in instant method expected to return winning numbers. And that's because basically we're saying that this function returns this. But right now we aren't returning anything. And that's because we haven't added in the rest of the logic we need. So for now, let's just put return like this, empty array, just to silence that warning. So now the next thing that we need to do is actually get the endpoint that we're going to be using. So let's just jump back over to Safari. And we know that the URL, the API endpoint is here, but if you forgot how to get that, just jump back to this screen or if you're on this screen, pretty much you probably will be on this first. Just click on the actions button and then API, and then copy the endpoint that we have here. Now, when we jump back to Xcode, all we have to say is private let endpoint. It's a string, have it equal to what we want, and that's that. Now, what we want to do right now, this is just a regular string, so we want to make it that we can use it as a URL, right? So to do that, what we're going to do is basically, let's say guard let URL equal, we're going to convert our string to a URL. So we have to say URL. Look for the ones that takes in a string. We're going to throw an endpoint in there. And then we're going to say else. And we could say return and just have it return an empty array if this does happen, but I don't want to do that. Since we already added throws, that means that through the throws keyword here, that means that this function can handle throwing errors. So let's do that. And if you know my streams, you know I love using the classics here. So I'll just say enum, and I'll say API service error, services error, have it conform to an error. And then for each case, I'll add one. So I'll say invalid URL, then I'll add invalid response. And then for this one, I'll just have it be a custom error that takes in the error that we might receive. That we want it to show, or basically that we get in the catch block. So now right here, instead of just having it return an empty array, we can do throw. Say API service error that invalid URL. Just like that, we got that. All right. So now the next thing we're going to do now is actually use the URL that we just got. So we have to use this using URL session, but the call that we're going to make can throw. So we're going to put it inside a do catch first. I'm going to say, oh, let's add a catch part. Right. And for the catch, let's just make it print some error. We don't really care about this right now. So for this part, which we do care about, we're going to say, fill this out. We're going to say, this is data response. And then we're going to say try await URL session. And remember, we're using a URL session that we're going to work with Swift Concurrency, which is async. So we have to make sure we're using the right one. So when we hit shared and then we say dot, we have to make sure we look for the one that takes a URL like this one. You notice it can take a URL request, and I think there might be some other parameters. But we want to also pick the one that that can throw, is asynchronous and can throw. So we have to use this one. So just say enter, and then we'll put our URL inside. And what's going to happen now is we should be okay with errors. Cool. So what this is saying is basically we're using this function on URL session share.data. We're passing in the URL that we transformed this string. We transformed it to a URL, and we're using it to connect to the internet and using it to connect to the API to get that data. Now when we get that data, we get it as a tuple like this. So the tuple is like when you get two values, and then like you can identify them like this. So we get a data type here, and then we get a response type here. So we let's just move to the next step. The next thing we're going to do now is actually check if our response is good. And then if our response is good, then we transform our data. So to check if our response is good, we say guard let HTTP URL response. This is the new variable I'm creating. And I'll say response as HTTP URL response. So I'm transforming this response to HTTP URL response. I'm trying to see if it can. And then if it can, now I want to check if it's a valid status code. So I'll say something, let's scroll up, 200.299. And then I'll check if it contains the status code that we're going to get from this variable. I'll say HTTP URL response, status code. And then if it is a valid status code is between this range. So if it is between this range, if status code is between this range, that means we have a valid response there. So we'll say else. I remember we have our throws, so we'll throw an error for this. And we have a function, a case for that, which is invalid response and API service error. So we'll throw this. And we'll say invalid response, throw this error when this happens. All right, cool. So now the next thing we're going to do is try to decode the data, or basically transform the data, which is this. I'm using option to click on this, and you see it's a data type, but I need to transform it to be a winning numbers array. So to do that, I have to say, let's say winning numbers. Some people start off by typing from the end, like you're actually using JSON decoder versus naming the variable and then typing, but I do like a variation. So JSON decoder, which is what we're going to use to decode, transform that data to the array of winning numbers. I'm going to say decode, and what we want to transform into is winning numbers. This is that self here, and then what we want to transform to winning numbers, it's saying from here, is the data, which is this type here. So we're transforming this data type to an array of winning numbers. Now we're getting an error here, and it's saying that the call can throw. So you just have to snap a try here. Okay. And now if you check this type, this winning numbers type by clicking optional, you see that it is an array of winning numbers. So the JSON decoder basically transformed data type to an array of winning numbers. So let's just return this now. Say winning numbers. Right? And now our success case, if everything works fine, is all set. But more than likely, there will be some type of issue because, you know, APIs can be down. The user's internet might be down, their cellular data might be down, and we might get an error. So to handle for these cases of error inside this catch block, we're just going to use our custom error. So we'll start by saying throw. And remember, we added a custom error here. Okay. Custom, and it takes in some type of string. So the string we're going to use for this is API service error, custom. And the string we're going to use for this is error.localize description. And if you don't know where I got error from right here, basically inside every catch block there we automatically get an error variable that we can use that basically told why it's inside the do block something failed, and in the catch block we'll see what that error was. So now we can get rid of this placeholder that was returning an empty array. And now we scroll up, our service logic for getting the latest winning numbers is done. So now if we jump back to review, you see that we're still just pretty much just showing hello world here. And the same thing in our content view, we're just showing it the same thing, hello world here, just with this MegaMillionz sign, tab item. So all we want to do is actually use our API to get the data and then show it inside our view. So to do that, we have to use a view model. So we'll jump back to our MegaMillionz view folder here. And we're going to create a new file. I'm going to call this MegaMillionz view model. View model. Yeah. And then inside here, we'll call it the same thing. And then we're going to make it conform to an observable object. And the reason we're doing that is that so that we can listen for certain changes, like views can listen for certain changes and then for some certain properties. And then when that value does change, the view updates to show it. So, well, yeah. So let's just start off. So all you want to do is introduce our services. Remember, we have our services here that we just created. We want to make it that we can use this. So we could just literally just instantialize, API services input and use it within the view, but that we're using an MVVM architecture, so we don't want to have all that business logic or service logic inside the view. We want to keep it separate with a view model. So to use it inside our view model, we have to add a dependency for it. So let's say services, and this will be API services, and we're using the protocol, not the concrete class. You see, API services input. And the reason for this is to help with unit testing later on. Because remember, you should not be firing real API calls in your unit testing. You're making like a fake version of your service class and using mocks for it. So we'll add the initializer that we need. So Now our MegaMillionz view model has a dependency of services, and then we added it for the initializer here. One more thing that we're going to do is I don't want to have to initialize add services every single time. So I'm going to add a default value here, and I'll just say API services impl. All right. Nice. Now we basically have this class that has access to this service dependency that we can use to our services class that we want to use. So now let's make it that our view actually has access to this view model, like our view can be used with a view model. Let's jump back over to the MegaMillionz view here, and then we're gonna give some space, and then we're gonna say state object var view model, and then we could initialize it too, and then we're gonna say MegaMillionz view model. And we don't have to pass in services here because remember we gave it a default value, which is this right here. So it's automatically using this, so I don't have to reuse it. And the benefit of that is when we write unit tests, I can just pass in a fake services to use. Anyways, so now our view has access to our view model, which is this right here. So what we want to do now is jump back to our MegaMillionz view model right here. And then we're gonna go like start by creating the function that we can use to actually get the winning numbers. So let's say fetch numbers, right? And then we're gonna say something like let numbers equal winning numbers equal services that fetch them, right? And we're gonna see a couple errors here. So the first thing is, remember, fetch winning numbers, if we jump to it, is a asynchronous call right here, right? That means that any function that calls it must be in an asynchronous context. So for right now, our function is not asynchronous because, well, it doesn't have the keyword here. So let's just add that. And now that resolves one of the errors. The next error is that, remember, this function also can throw an error. See, we also have this marked with throws. So to handle throwing functions, it's best I would do two things. You gotta add a try to it, so like this. And you'll see that this resolves the error or part of the error. But you see it's saying that the errors thrown here are not handled. To fix this, we have to put it inside a do catch. So let's cut this, and then we're gonna say do, paste that here, then say catch, and then for now let's just print the error. All right, what's blocking you? So what we're seeing now is, so we've put it inside a do catch and we got rid of the error that was saying that we're not handling any errors and errors that might throw from this function. We see that. The last thing that we need to add here, and it says the expression is async, but it's not marked with await. So all we have to do is just add an await here because remember, this is an asynchronous function. So now we are rid of all errors, and when this function runs, we should be able to get hopefully an array of winning numbers. So let's test it out first, and let's see if we can print what we got. And we're gonna add a breakpoint here, and we're gonna add a breakpoint in the catch block just in case we get a failure or error issue. So now we have to figure out where are we gonna call this. We want to call this honestly like whenever the user comes to the screen. So to do that, we have to jump to our MegaMillionz view, right? And for now, let's just get rid of this. Let's just put VStack. Let's just add a VStack in here, and let's just add back some text. Next, and then on our VStack, we're gonna add something called a modifier. Now, modifier is basically a way how you can add special abilities or features to whatever view that you add on that modifier to. So for now, I want to add a task modifier to our VStack, and I'll tell you what that is in a sec. So this comes to boom, add task here. And what happens with task is basically task is makes it that whenever the screen is shown, we can run some asynchronous task. I remember we have an asynchronous function that we want to run. Remember? So let's jump here. And you see, this is a fetch winning numbers is an asynchronous function. So we basically want to run this as soon as the screen appears. So this is the perfect place to put it. So we'll say await, and we'll say view model dot fetch winning numbers, right? And now if we should run this, what we're going to see is we won't see anything appear on the screen because we're not doing that yet. What we're actually doing is checking if we're actually getting the data properly. So our breakpoints here, when this function calls, will either fail or we'll be able to get the data. So let's run it. Okay, this can take forever to run. Let me minimize it so you can see as the simulator is moving. And I will grab this and grab half of this. So our simulator here is running. There are a ton of windows open. Let me just close some. Still running, people. And it just takes forever for our expo to load up some of this. Okay, so we finally finished with it. And you can see that the breakpoint hit on the cat inside our do condition here. This is a good news because that means that our data is actually being decoded and are transformed into the way we want. So we can just maximize Xcode again, and then we are gonna dump or print the data to see what it looks like. So I'm just gonna make our breakpoint continue. I'll hit next, and you see it's a bunch of data. So I'm just gonna look at some of them. But you see, like one, you can see that we're actually getting the data in the format that we want. So this looks good. All right, so yeah. So now let's just stop Xcode, and then we can lower our console right there. I know we don't really need to just print it. What we're going to focus on right now is trying to actually show this inside the screen. So right now we're just adding it inside this variable that we created, and it's locked inside the scope of this function. What we want to do instead is make it that we can use this winning numbers, our data that we get from it, inside our view, inside a list here. So to do that, we have to create something called a publish variable. So we'll go here, I'll say publish for winning numbers, and then I'll mark this as winning number, right? And I'll make it an empty array. Hey, what's up, Louise Gaming? What's up? What's up, kid? Sorry, I just got back to you. All right. So now that we have this, publish variable here called winning numbers, what you want to do is actually add the data that we get from the API inside winning numbers. And the benefit of marking it with publish, right, like we did here, is basically whenever this variable gets updated, the SwiftUI view will automatically re-render to show that new data. So that's the benefit of using it with at published and using it inside an observable object. So instead of just creating the variable here inside this own scope, what we're going to do is use this version. So it's the same name. So let me just remove the let here, and now that will handle it for that. Now we'll handle it for that. So now what we can do is simply jump back to our view, and we're going to use a list, a SwiftUI list, to actually show at least one parameter from the data that we're getting. So remember, so we're going to use this variable, or publish variable, inside our MegaMillionz view. So let's get rid of this, and we're just going to say list, right? And this is going to show a minor error, but I'm going to show you how to fix it. And I'll say this winning number in, right? And let's just give it a second. It's going to flag us with the error. Cool. So the error it's complaining about is, remember I was saying that we're going to probably have to add an additional protocol to our model. That's the one that it's complaining about. So if we click on the error, it says requires that winning numbers conform to identifiable. So to fix this is we have to add I have to add a protocol here called identifiable. Okay. Okay. All right. Now that we added the protocol here called identifiable, one of the requirements for identifiable is that we actually add a ID. So the ID we're gonna add is say, let's just say let ID, and because this API doesn't come with like a ID parameter, let me just show you. So as you see, there's no ID parameter here, so I can't just use that. So what I have to do instead is actually create our own. So I'll say let ID equal EUID. And just by doing this, if we jump back to our MegaMillionz view, we'll see that this error goes away. Okay, cool. So now, again, what we want to at least test doing is actually just showing the text. So we're going to say text, and then we're going to say winning numbers, and let's pick winning numbers. Since it's just a string, we can just pass this text. Then when I refresh our preview, okay, so we're able to see a list, and we see all these different winning numbers that we see here, which is a portion of what we want. So now let's break this down a bit more, and I want to add like a title up here. So to do that, what I'm going to do is wrap this view here inside a navigation stack. So I'll just cut this navigation stack, right? And then just paste it in here. Scroll up some more, and you see basically it looks the same, but I want to add a title, right? So what I'm going to do is add in a new modifier and our V stack. So I'll say navigation title. I take some type of text, which takes some type of string, and then we're going to say lottery. Nice, I kind of like that. So that's the first thing. I kind of want to see how it looks with a smaller title. So to change it to that, we have to add a new modifier, and that's navigation bar title display mode. So this first one pretty much here. And I'll set this to inline. And I feel like I kind of prefer this appearance. I'll go with this one. Next, what we're going to do is basically see if we can add in more properties, like more parts of the view inside the screen. So let's just add them in for now. So instead of just adding a text here, let's cut this. We're gonna use a V stack. So say something like a V stack there. Scroll down a bit, paste that in there, right? And then what other parameter do we have? I think we have a megaball and a multiplier. So let's do winning numbers, the megaball. All right. Let's just add that at the bottom so we know what that is. Then let's add one more for the multiplier. So winning numbers, the multiplier. Oh. Just checking Twitch. Okay, see what they're saying. All right, cool. So now, the first thing I'm noticing, a couple things. So I don't know what these two bottom numbers are. It's hard for me to tell what they are. I can easily tell that more than likely these are the winning numbers though. Let me zoom in so you can see that. Yeah, so I can easily tell that these are the winning numbers here. But I don't know what these two numbers are. I know from the code that, well, the top one is a megaball, the second one is a multiplier. So let's just add some text right beside this just to help. So we'll cut this momentarily. And then we're going to do string. And then for here, we will just say megaball. Add that. Then let's drop back the same variable that we were using. So now we have an idea of what it even is, right? So now what we're going to do is do the same thing here that we're doing for the multiplier. So we'll say cut this, add in the string, add this line here, like that, and then plop it right there. Okay. So now this looks pretty good, I guess. Well, not good. We're going to make some more updates. But what I want to do is actually see if we can move all this V stack, all this sets of stuff that we have here to a different screen. Oh, one more thing. Let's add the date. Right now it's going to be in the wrong format, but we'll fix that in a second. So we'll say winning numbers dot date, draw date. And you're going to see it being this weird format that is just hard for us to understand, right? So to fix this, we're going to do that. We have to use a date formatter to convert it to a different date. But before we do that, let's cut our V stack here, right? And we're going to make its own custom view for it. So we're going to jump over to our folders over here. And we're going to create a new folder. I'm going to call this row view, right? Command N. And then I'm going to create a new SwiftUI view. And I'm going to just call this row view. You can call it whatever you want. Highly encourage you to try to tweak it whenever you're following. And I'll say row view here. And then I'm just going to paste the same stuff that we had over there, right? And we're going to get some errors because, well, this view doesn't know what winning numbers is, because previously we were just passing in this here. So this view doesn't know what this is. So to make it that this view can accept it so that it knows what it is when we do pass in a value, we'll say something like winning numbers, right? I want to make it that it's a parameter. So this struct row view has a parameter for winning numbers. And now we have to update the preview too. So we'll start by doing a fix here. Hit that. And then for draw date, requires some type of string. So let's just fill this in. That way when we're doing the previews, it's much easier. So we'll copy this right here. See, and then scroll down. Let's hide our canvas. And then for our draw date, let's just paste that there. And then same thing for the numbers. Put that there. And then for MegaMillionz multiplier, these are the same for this one. So I'll put, actually this has made them different. All right, so now our preview, it will be able to show us that. So let's maximize this again. And then let's see if we can put our preview. All right, cool. So now this is kind of like what each row will basically look like. But we're gonna do some more styling and some more updates to make this look chef's kiss better. So what we're gonna do now is actually pass our row view, or actually use it inside our MegaMillionz view. So inside the list here, remember we got rid of that. We're just gonna paste back row view. And then if I drop in winning numbers, you'll see it looks the same thing. All right, cool. So now we have some basic data showing on screen. All right, so now what we're gonna do is see if we can work on adding some styling, making this look a bit more better. So, see what we should do first. So actually, I don't really like this list style. That's the first thing I'm thinking. So let's see if we can change this and maybe just go plain. So I'll just say list style. And then I'll just say passing plain. And then we'll see that like that. And now what we could do is jump back to our row view here, right? Wait till that preview loads. And now you see each of these right here. One thing I'm thinking is I want to let's do it going down. So the first thing I want to change is pretty much the date. I want to make it that this is a much more easy to read date. A bunch of ways how we could do this. We could do this using a view model. We could do this by adding in an extension on the model. But because we're using MVVM, we're gonna do it the view model way, which is gonna take a bit more coding, but it's better testing, but way better for testing. So to do this, we are going to go inside our folders right here. And we know we're going to create a new file inside the row view. So we'll say new file from template. I guess we could have said, yeah, Swift file. And this is going to call the row view model, right? And now inside here, let's just create that class. So row view model. This doesn't need to be an observable object, right? But because we want to use this as inside our row view, want to use this view model for each row, for handling for each row, like handling the formatting and so forth. Basically all that type of logic. We just want the view to show stuff that we give it. We want to get rid of this winning numbers. I know we just added it in, but I just want to show you like the flow of how you can do it and actually transforming a view from not having a view model to actually using a view model. So we'll cut this temporarily, and we're going to have it require a view model instead. I'm going to say row view model right here. We're going to get a bunch of errors, but just pause for a second and we're going to jump to back to our row view model, right? Then we're going to paste, we're going to add the parameter that we need, which is winning numbers. Numbers, right? Let's just add an initializer. So whenever you initialize it, you have to pass this in. And we're not giving it a default value, you just have to pass it in. So now when we jump back to row view, remember, we're in row view model. We added the parameters so that it takes a winning numbers. And we want to basically use our view model inside our row view. So to fix this, we say all the places that we were just directly using winning numbers, all we have to do is just tag on view model dot at the end of it, since our view model has access to each winning number. Copy this. I'll just copy view model dot, and I'm just going to paste it in front of each of them. Just as simple. All right. Now we see all that gone. Now we have to update our preview because our preview uses row view. I remember we updated it to make it that row view needs a view model. Let's just cut this. And plot back the, oh, I didn't add this in. So I gotta fill this back up. I thought I copied it. I'll say winning numbers. Draw it. Minimize this again real quick. If you already did this, or if you did copy it, which is good, you could just skip forward like probably like 5 seconds, and I should be done with this. I'm just copying this stuff for the preview. So draw date. Let me just paste this here. Why is it? Copy this for real. Command C. Then cut that. Command V. Okay. Now we're gonna add this one in. Then the same thing here. So it's 3. And then I will just make this different. Now let's just maximize Xcode again. And now we should see the same thing. Only thing is now our view requires a view model instead of just a raw data type for the model. Flagging here, and I think that's just because inside our main view up here, MegaMillionz view, we're still just using directly winning numbers. Let's get rid of this. And let's say view model, row view model, winning numbers, and then we're gonna pass in winning numbers, right? Nice. And now when our preview loads, we're able to see that data right here, and we're using a view model. So now if we jump back to row view, we should be able to see our preview. So again, the first thing we're going to do is get rid of this type of date format that we have here. So to do that, we're going to go inside our row view model, and we're going to create a function, and let's just call this format date, right? And to format the date, you're going to need something called a date formatter. Let's say date formatter. Well, date formatter. So now we have date formatter like that. And what we want to do is basically make it that for our date formatter, we want to tell it the format. We want to convert that string that we have. Remember, this value right here, we have it as a string. We want to convert this from a string to a Swift date type. So to do that, we use date formatter here, right? And then we have to tell it the format that the string is in. So say date format, and what I like to do is say go over here, grab how this looks, and see, and then I'll jump back in Xcode, pasting this here, and then I'll add the format that it's in by saying like the letters. So Y, and then for months it's for day, it's DD. And then for this T right here, make sure you add like this quotation, I don't know what that is called. Add the quotation here too. And then for hours here, you just say HH, minutes, SS. And I think this is SZZ. This is I think it's something like this. Or something like that. I don't remember the last part, but we'll test this and see if this works. And now what we're gonna do is say let date, let formatted date equal date formatter. We're gonna use the date formatter now since we told it the format. We're gonna pass in the string, and the string, because remember we have access to the winning numbers, so for each of those winning numbers for each day we have access to it. So we're gonna use a date that's on this. So I'll say winning numbers dot draw date, right? And this will give us either optional date type. If I hold optional here, it's an optional date type. And I basically want to return this to the view and show the date in the view. So I'll have this return formatted date. And obviously it's gonna error out because, well, we're in our function title here, our signature, we don't have the return type. So let's just add that in. Date optional, right? Now what we're going to do to test this is let's go to our actual view again, row view. And then instead of using date directly like this, right? What we're gonna say is if let number date, right, is equal to view model, and then we're gonna call the function that actually converts it. Remember, so basically if it's nil, we won't see this presented. If it isn't, we'll see the date presented. So now we'll say text, and then we're gonna say winning number date, and then for this I think it's tile, and then you say date right here. This is second. Not seeing it presented there, so that pretty much means that we aren't able to format it. I'm pretty sure it's because of these last 2 points here. So I think this should... Let's just run that again. Formatting. Oh. Could it about all seconds? Yes. Okay, so it was just all SSS because now we see the date up here, so that looks a little bit better. Nice. One thing I'm noticing is that everything inside the same font. It's kind of hard to tell stuff different. Let's see if we can make the date bolder than the dates, and then kind of push this stuff to the center of the screen versus it being left aligned. All right, so we're gonna touch on. Do you see this error flashing up here? We're gonna touch on this in a second. Let's just add some quick bolding first. So minimize this, and then when we refresh our preview, what we're gonna do is add a couple modifiers to our text. Cause remember, modifiers add new abilities to a particular view, and the new ability we want to add it is to this text view. So I'm gonna say dot bold, add the bold modifier, and you see the text gets bold. But I still think it's too small, so I'll add a font, and I'll say title 2. See how this looks? I like how that looks. That's much better, because the first thing you want to know is when you open the app, you want to see what date. You want to check to make sure the date is correct. Like, I'm looking at the correct numbers for the correct date. So that's one of the first things you want to do. All right, now this looks pretty good. The other thing that I want to do, I'm thinking, I feel like we could make the multiplier probably a secondary color, or probably just like a different color. So what I'm going to do here is I'm going to add a modifier just to that. So I'll say foreground style, and I'll just make it secondary. And you're going to notice the multiplier kind of gets like a lighter color right here. Cool. But the mega ball is still highlighted. So now this looks kind of good. The only thing that I don't like is that I want to make each of these numbers be inside a ball. And the reason why that is we can't exactly do that right now is because right now all the winning numbers are inside one string. That's why I can just present it like that, and they're separated by spaces. You see? All of these are just one string. It's not like in an array of the numbers, it's just one string. Not sure why they did that, but they did. But it's their endpoint, so they can do whatever. All right, so how we can fix this to make it that we can see each number, handle each number individually and show it within like a ball or something like that. What we can do is we want to transform this string to an array of strings. And one thing we could do to handle this pretty easy is say, let's create we could do this inside our view model too and just have that logic inside here. So as you see, we're seeing this error here. It's saying publishing changes from the background thread is not allowed. So I'm going to get back to handling that issue. But if you want to resolve this issue, just add a new decorator here. So I'll say main actor. And then if we run this again, you notice that when we scroll, we won't see any error occur here anymore. I'm just scrolling for fun. Okay. And then if we close this, or if we just kept it open, you won't see any error here. So that threading error is gone. So now let's get back to business. So we want to convert this string of space numbers to an array of numbers. So to do that, we're going to create a function. We're going to say convert our split numbers, split winning numbers. Oh, you can't see anything. Sorry about that. So I scrolled up. So I'm creating a function here called split winning numbers. All right. And obviously we know we wanted to return an array of strings. All right. Not easy. Oh, that's what we want. And now inside here, what we want to make it is that we want to use the winning numbers. So let's get them. So is equal to, all right, let's just say numbers equal to winning numbers that oh, we're getting for each one. Oh, we're actually inside the mega view model. Missed that. So not inside the mega view model, we actually need to go to the row view model. My bad. So let's jump to the row view model. And then we're going to paste by the function that we want handling here. Because we want to handle this for each individual row. I was wondering why we weren't able to access that. So same function, everything. Function calls split winning numbers. It returns an array of strings. And inside here, this is where we're going to use it. So winning numbers here. And now we're going to say dot winning numbers. And now we're able to get that string, right? But remember, we want to convert this to an array of strings. So we have to use something called a separator. Component separated by. Yeah, something like this. And then I'll put a space because I want to create an array based on each space. Because you see how there's a space here, there's a space here, there's a space here. Basically, I want to create an array based on every gap or space within it. So the first element will be 13. And then since there's a space here, we'll ignore that space and then go over to the next element. So the next element would be 20. Space here, ignore that. And then grab the next number, 26, and create the array. So now when we do this, you'll see if you check the option, the type for numbers, you'll see it's an array of strings, which is exactly what we need. So now we'll just say return numbers. So that works. So now when we go inside our row view, right? Instead of just doing something like, let me load a preview so you can see it. Refresh as I do this. Yes, I can see it refresh as I do this. And what we're going to do is, instead of using numbers like this right here, what we're going to say is we're going to use a for each loop and show each number, right? And then after that, we're going to put them inside a ball. So we're going to say something like for each And then we're going to say view model that, remember, we're just going to call our function, since our function basically splits those numbers into an array of strings. So split winning numbers, and then this gives us that. And now I can say drop that right there. And then winning number in. All right. So using types like this with for each can be kind of weird sometimes, because right now we're getting an error, like say just an array of strings like this. We're seeing an error, so it's saying cannot convert value of type array of string to expected argument type range and some type of int. So to fix this, we can do this a bunch of ways. So we could firstly let me jump back to our model. So you see our model here, which returns a string, right? And then inside our row view model, we converted it to return an array of strings. What we could do is make it that this returns, instead of a string type, make it that it returns an array of our custom type. And then make it that each model in there takes an ID. But that's one way how you could do it. I feel like you don't have to do it that way. A more simpler approach would be to simply just go here in front of view model that split winning numbers and use it like indices instead. And then what we could do is, instead of a winning number, we wouldn't get a winning number here, we'd actually just get the index. And then we really wanted to see what it is, we could say then view model dot winning numbers, right? And then where's that winning? It seems like a lot. Winning numbers, and then we want to get the first one, right? So to get the first one, we just say dot index. Now oh, I think this is okay, seriously. So view model, it's actually not this way. I'm bugging right now. So it's view model split winning numbers, and then we use the index on that. And now you see it's kind of showing us, but it's showing us it vertically. We want to show this horizontally. That's pretty easy to fix. All we have to do is basically wrap our for each in a H stack. So let's embed in H stack. And let's the preview roll. And as you see, it automatically right there converted to be having all that stuff horizontal. So now you're going to see this warning here. To fix this, just hit add a new parameter. Let's say ID. That's that itself. And now that warning will disappear and we'll still be able to see our view. So now let's just run this again, the full app, instead of relying on just the preview, just to make sure this is working as expected or as we would like. Okay, nice. So we are able to see the date, we can see each number, all that stuff. So that's good. So like I mentioned before, let's stop this real quick and then let's maximize it. Like I mentioned before, what you want to do is show each of these numbers, this text right here. Remember, this represents each number inside a kind of like ball-like view. So to do this, we could say that background, right? And then we could say something like circle. Right? No, you might. Oh, our preview isn't even loading. So you see, it's kind of wrapped it like that, right? I know we're gonna say fill, right? And then inside here, let's do something like blue. Fill content, yeah. And then we'll say color.blue. And you see now we kind of have the balls kind of in our view, but not exactly how you wanted it, because you see it's like right to the edge. Let's just add some padding here. You might not need all of this that it gives us by default. It doesn't look terrible. Let's run it to see how this looks. We're running the full simulator. And yeah, it looks good. Yeah, it looks pretty good. So we'll keep this size here with the padding. And one thing I don't really like is the color of the numbers. I feel like we could make them white. That might give it like a better view and easier to see. Let's just make that change real quick. So say that tint. I think we can use tint for this. Let's just see first. White. Run again. If you want to rely on the preview, you can. I see that did not work. So let's jump back here. And I think we'll have to use something else. And I think this is foreground style. Let's just run this again. Okay, all right, cool. So, you see the numbers are much easier to see and they're in like this kind of white coloring. The last thing I kind of want to do for these balls is one, adding some boldness to the numbers and actually giving it like a shadow. That way it's like, it kind of pops more to you. So let's maximize this and minimize it right there. And now let's just do bold, right? Let's load a preview. All right, so we see the boldness there. I think you can do something like, don't want to just use that. You can do font weight and then just say heavy. Heavy might be the boldest. Yeah, heavy. So that look much better, I think. And now let's add the shadow that we're thinking about. I think add a shadow here. Okay, so it did add that shadow. So it's, you see, it gives it it's kind of hard to tell from here, but when you're running it on in your Xcode, you'll see that it kind of gives it the extra, that kind of roundness feeling. Like it's kind of almost off the screen. And that's one of the beauties of using shadow. If you use this in the right place, it can really change your perspective of like your app himself. So let's do a complete run again. All right, yeah. So now we are able to, yeah, we can see everything that we want, right? So the next thing that we want to do is, let's close this and maximize Xcode again. Let's just lower that console window there. And so the next thing we want to do is, let's jump back over to our MegaMillion view, right? And then one thing I want to do is make it that like, is make it that whenever the user drags, like when you're on like Twitter or any type of social media, you can basically pull down and that will refresh the screen. So to add that feature, like when you drag it down here and you see that spinner, Swift made this mad easy, and all we have to do is add another modifier. So let's add this modifier to our V stack. So scroll down, and then it's called refreshable. And if I add this in, just by adding this in without anything in here, if I start dragging this, you see that spinner, just like that. So all we want to do is basically make it that we recall the API if you drag the screen. So we can just copy whatever we had in text, which calls the API. If you want to add some extra functionality, maybe when they refresh, maybe you want to do something based on a date or something else, you can add in that logic in refreshable. But for now, we're just recalling the API. So now that we have the refreshable, right? And if we pull this, you see, it makes that extra call to the API. So that's like an extra nice feature that we have there. The next, what we want to do is make it that one, we can show errors that might appear on the screen. So to fix this, we have to jump over to MegaMillionz view model right here, right? And then you see right now, we're just printing the error. What we want to do instead is actually show the error. So do this, we're going to add 2 new properties, and I'm going to call them one publish, and then I'm going to say something like show error alert. It's going to be a boolean that basically determines whether we should show the alert or not. And then another publish variable, and this is going to be a string one, and this is going to be error message string like that, right? And now oh, I forgot a var. All right, so now here inside our catch block, remember our catch block is where our errors would occur. So to handle this inside here, what we have to do is let's get rid of the print that we're just doing, and then we're gonna say error message is equal to, error that localized description. And again, this is the error that we get from the system. This isn't our custom error. And then we're gonna say show error alert and toggle it. So basically it's gonna become true so then the user would see the error alert. And we set the error message to what we want to show if there is an error in a catch block. So now to actually make it that the view knows when to show the error and has the ability to show the error, we have to add a new modifier. So in SwiftUI, a lot of this stuff is going to be tweaking your modifiers, adding little changes, and that's the beauty of SwiftUI. So the modifier we're going to add here is .alert. And we're going to use, if you watch my previous streams, you know I love using this one. So I'll say view model that show error alert, right? And then this just takes an alert type, and this alert type just needs some type of text. So for this, we'll just say view model that error message. Remember, we made it that this error message would be equal to whatever the localized description that we get from the error, from the system error. All right. So now to test this, let's make it that our error or our API will actually fail. Let's just get rid of this portion here. Let's just see if this fits. Run it. Okay, so we don't need the JSON. So that's a good sign. So let's just remove some other part of our services. Get rid of this portion then. And then let's run it. Okay, we can get rid of this breakpoint. And you see this error message pop up. Now this, again, this is the system error message. You watch my previous streams or videos, you'll notice I go through a bunch of ways of how you can actually fetch and show a more readable error message. So I'll leave that one to you to kind of mess with. But basically all you're really going to be changing is if you maximize this, is going to our API services here, right? It would be going to our API services here. I remember we set up this custom error case right here. We would have to basically add a variable in here and have for each type of case that this error enum has, we have to give it our own possible readable error, a more relatable error that the user would understand. Watch other streams and there's a ton of examples of how to do this. This is your kind of little homework. So I'll leave that there for now and we'll settle with this one. So the next thing we want to do is let's fix back our API here. Right. And then we want to show a spinner as we're getting the data. So maybe the user's internet connection is slow, maybe their cellular data is slow. We want to show like a spinner to let them know like we're doing something. Excuse me. So to do that, we have to add another publish variable. So this one will be at publish var is loading. It's going to be a boolean. We'll set this equal to false, right? And then basically whenever this is true, that's when we would show the spinner. If it's false, then we wouldn't show the spinner. So the first time we want to show the spinner is when we start making the API call. So say is loading is equal to true here. And then we want to hide the spinner after we're done making the API call. So say is loading is equal to false. And then let's just copy this again. Command C. And then inside the catch block too, we want to set this to false. Because we don't want to be in a situation where it's like we set is loading to true, the API call was made, it failed. This never gets hit. And this, if the catch block doesn't change, it is loading back to false. We just have a spinner on screen for the entire period. We don't want that. So now we have these in. So now we have to jump back to MegaMillionz view here. And now we have to add another modifier. The modifier we're going to add here is called overlay. So we'll say overlay here, and then it's going to be, if view model that is loading is true, then we just say progress view, and let's just add some type of title here. And we'll just say let's just give it some type of emoji. I like using emojis. I feel like it gets a little extra experience to it. Right. So if I run this now, you might not see it appear, right? You might see it appear really quickly only because it seems like this API is pretty fast. When I run this, you see it appears like super fast. That's because the API is really, really fast. But at least we know it's appearing as we need it, right? So now, let's see, we go over to so I'm gonna make it that you can see it for a bit. So if we jump back to our MegaMillionz view model, right? And then you see inside here, this is where I'm actually setting it to false. If I should just comment this out for a second and then rerun the app, you see you still keep seeing this little spinner right here on our screen. So we know, yeah, if we don't set this to false, we're just gonna keep seeing that. It's not the experience we want. So let's close that, let's uncomment that, and then we're gonna run it again. And you see it's gonna be really quick, and then we see the data. Just like we're thinking. Cool. So now what we can do is we can both see error alerts that might happen. We can refresh the screen. We can also get the data from the screen, model it, and we added some type of styling to the app to improve the experience. So one more thing I'm thinking that we could do is let's see how this operates in accessibility mode. So to check that, what we can do is here, minimize that for a second, and we're going to go up to Xcode and then go to open the developer tools. I'm going to hit accessibility inspector here, and this is a way how we can kind of check the voiceover experience for different users. So to do this, we have to set where we want it. So you can set it to your MacBook, different devices that you might have. And for me, I want to set it to our simulator, right? So I'll hit that right here. Then we'll reopen this. Let's run it. Right. He might not be able to hear everything, but basically, like a user that might be using the app using voice over mode, what they would hear is, yeah, so the first thing they would hear is basically lottery. Like that would be the first thing they hear. And then if they swiped, they would hear the date, and then they would hear this number 5, 22, 24, 29, 42, megaball, that. So would hear all of this information separately, and they would have to do each swipe for them. So what we can do to kind of reduce this is basically see if we can add like one type of label that kind of says all of this in one line instead of saying it in multiple different lines. So let's close this for a second. And then we're going to jump over to row view because that's pretty much where it's showing it. It's like on each row. And let's get rid of this. And let's maximize. And then in our V stack here, right, we're going to scroll all the way down to the edge of it. And then we have to add a new modifier, but this is going to be an accessibility one. So let's scroll down. I think we can set this to hidden. It's accessibility element and ignore. So let's just say so we're gonna set this to ignore. So basically I want to make it that whenever for each row I want it to, whenever the user scrolls, I want to make it that it's just one text that they hear, or one just flow. They don't have to scroll from first number to the second number to the third number. They just hear everything in one go. So to do that, we can add an accessibility label like this, and then inside this text is basically what we want to hear instead. And then in here I want to hear the date, so that's the first thing I want to hear. Oh, actually, let's let them hear the date and then hear each number. So they swipe, they hear the date, and then they swipe again, and then they hear each number. So then it would be numbers are, And then I am going to use our string version of this. So I'll say winning numbers, right? Numbers. And the mega ball is right. Right? And the I just say I don't like saying and too much. Just say while the I'm gonna hear bother me. While the multiplier is, and let's just put that in here. You model that winning numbers multiplier. Dot multiplier. Right. So now basically what we want to do is like for each row, we don't want to hear everything that's happening inside the screen. Kind of just want to get that detail pretty fast. So let's see if we can do that. Let's run this again. And then we're going to run our accessibility inspector on it. So this is the app for that, pretty much. Let's run. Okay. All right. So now you notice it's like kind of doing the entire cell. It's not just for each element that's inside the screen. And that's like a much better experience because then the person that might be visually impaired or might be using just a voiceover mode for whatever reason doesn't have to remember continuously what each element was. They hear it instantly. I don't know why you can't hear the accessibility speaker, but basically what's happening is whenever they highlight or are focused on, say, this row, what they'll hear now is winning numbers are this, and the megaball is 0.3 while, open this, pretty much the same exact thing. It just got cut off here. While so pretty much the same thing that we added. Yeah, while the multiplier is whatever the multiplier number is. So one thing, so that kind of like handles it, but one thing I'm noticing is that we're not mentioning the date. And that's because we pretty much ignored everything here. I'm wondering if we can just add an accessibility children and see if we can specify not to ignore this one. Looks like we can't, because I added it to everything. So what we're going to do instead is simply just add it inside our accessibility label. So let's minimize this. I'm sure Apple has that we can handle this. So let's say 4. And let's just say this. And we're gonna have some space here. I'm gonna say view model dot format date, right? So it's gonna say for this date. Let's save this. So just use the current one. All right. Now let's jump back. So now that we're running that, let's jump back to our accessibility inspector. I wish y'all could hear the okay. But basically what you see here now is that inside our label, so whenever the user highlights any of these views in voiceover mode, it's going crazy right now. Let me just switch to this. Yeah, so whenever the user highlights any but whenever the user highlights any of these views, it will tell all that information instantly. So it will say for Friday, August 30th, 2024 at whatever time. The winning numbers are that, and the megaball is 0.8, while the multiplier is 0.4. And they were able to get this information for each cell versus having to, for each element on the screen, having to swipe. So this is a much better experience for voiceover users as well. So that's just a little touch up that we added using accessibility. And now what we want to do, let's just close this and let's just give it another run just to see how everything looks all together. No. we are able to see all our numbers. We're able to refresh the screen. If we get an error, we can basically see that error or some type of alert, see that view. And yeah, so and we did all this using SwiftUI with MVVM and Swift Concurrency. So that's kind of the end of this pretty much stream. If you like this, just definitely like and comment and follow and share. Much more, we're going to be touching more NYC open data APIs and a bunch of other APIs too, building different type of apps and components with.